What is going on, Macropod? Man, it is going to be such a great podcast today. We've got a great guest coming from a special place for me. It's another homeland, but I haven't been. My heart yearns. Ireland is Stephen Feeney, who is a health coach for men, but a positive psychology coach. And his background is extensive. We've been talking so much from education, educating youth, to going through his own journey and then being able to talk about the application of just positive psychology among men and being a help out. Stephen has various, excellent points here. But Stephen, would you mind just, introducing yourself a little bit, elevator pitch to the community, and we can go right into some questions and how you got into this space, man.
Yeah, thanks, lads. Lovely to meet you. Real pleasure to be on the podcast. As I said off air, I've listened to a few of your pods, and I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic. My name is Stephen Feeney. I am from Ireland. I am living here in the southwest of Ireland, in the beautiful city of Cork, my adopted home. My moniker is the Flourishing Man. My company is the Flourishing Man, and it's positive psychology directed at men. I suppose my own background, I am as well. I'm actually a kindergarten teacher, which I balance with my coaching and positive psychology work. I've been an educator for about 14 years now, which has been really rewarding. I've taught various age groups. I've managed to teach in the UK and the States and back here in Ireland. And, one thing that taught me is that human beings were inherently born positive. Children find so much joy in their lives doing all manner of things, but through trials and tribulations of life, through challenges, through difficulties, through major traumatic events, that positivity can wane for a lot of people, and we're seeing that growing more and more and more. And I think that fortunately happened to me. That was something that I had to contend with. And I think my own journey to positive well-being was really spearheaded by positive psychology, which I encountered in 2020. So from there, I engaged in a coaching program which centered around positive psychology, and that just led to more desire for self-discovery in this topic. And I really felt that the tools that worked for me as a man, and I like to think of myself as a pretty typical guy. I was who I loved sports. I loved competitive action. I loved going out with my friends. I loved girls. I loved all the things that you would sort of equate with traditional masculinity. And but it wasn't serving me, and it really wasn't serving me. And it was only through positive psychology that I started to become more self-aware and more sure of myself. And I think really what I wanted to do was see if I could apply those skills with individuals, but particularly men, because I think we're in a situation where men more than ever need help to find who they are and serve the world in a better way, not just for themselves, and not just for what society's expectations. We obviously can talk a bit about toxic masculinity and sort of the opinions and views around that, but I've always kind of maintained if men have been the problem, then they've got to be part of the solution. But if they don't have the tools to be part of the solution, then how are they going to do that? So my coaching work is focused on men, and really with that thirst for knowledge, I've tried to add to my expertise by undergoing and participating in a certification in positive psychology with a Flourishing Center. And I know Caitlin Casson, one of your previous guests, was as a classmate of mine, and that led me back to Ireland eventually in 2023, where I undertook a master's program in applied psychology here at University College Cork, and that was just life-changing. I learned so many wonderful things: the application of positive psychology, understanding evidence-based practice behind coaching psychology, and also different coaching techniques, which I'm now trying to apply to the clients that I work with on a weekly basis. So it's been fantastic. I love doing content on my Flourishing Man Instagram page and my podcast, which I'd love to talk to you about as well. But it's been fantastic, and I'm getting really great response. And I know that there's a desire and hunger for men. They might not be shouting from the rooftop, waving a flag saying, I want this, but from the conversations I'm having, there's definitely a desire for men to feel better about themselves, not just from a physical point of view, which I know you guys work really closely with, but also from a mental point of view.
Yeah. And I think there's been a lot of change in that landscape over I guess, probably the last decade, in all honesty. I mean, obviously, we have different cultures in a sense with, American and Western culture versus where you're at in a sense. And I feel like for a lot of individuals I talk with that are coach centered, like in coaching specific people, they tend to lean this way with like the men and feeling like there's a little bit of a neutering to like how we act at times as a result of particular we'll call it like PC levels of like content, and like you almost moderate yourself, and it's all part of this kind of bigger like being a sheep in a sense, quote unquote, right? um with positive psychology though, and like, so if a man is trying to, again, to have that positive psychological spin, are there certain things that you view that men have to do in order to feel as though they're being a man? Like, does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, no, I know what you're trying to say. So it's kind of, I think what you're trying to get to is how men are striving to make improvements from a societal point of view, but also
Mm-hmm.
maintain that strength of masculinity. And I think that's just being super aware. I think being super aware of not watching yourself, but understanding that other people matter. That's a key concept in positive psychology, this idea that other people matter. And I think if men can use their masculinity to go out and help in their communities, help their partners, help their families, help their friends, that they can really demonstrate unbelievably incredible masculine energy in those areas. Um, I also think that the masculinity that they might display might come from a place of trying to fit in or lacking enough self-esteem to be themselves. And is there anything more masculine than just being yourself and maintaining who you are and ensuring that you're the best person that you can possibly be?
Hmm. Well, I mean, like, I guess, like, if you're having like more of an introspective look on it, then potentially, I mean, masculine energy is just whatever you hold to be true to like give you your positive vibes, right? Like,
Mm.
I don't, I mean, I guess to like gender norms, if you will, right? I guess like, boys should be beating up on each other, wrestling, with their brothers or sisters, and girls are going to be quote unquote playing with their dolls and kind of like keeping house. But like, as a dad of two younger kids, like, ironically, there is some sort of like nurturing the kind of elements that like my daughter has more so than my son, but my son also has like other like soft spots and nurturing things that he does that are after his like masculine energy is like kind of like expressed, and he's like, oh crap, I went too far with like my baby sister kind of thing. So it is interesting to kind of watch how these things unfold in my household, because I'm obviously not like telling them to do one or the other. I'm just like, hey, what do you want to play with? And my daughter will like, take her baby dolls and like pat them and like try to like legitimately like what's the word, like kind of like soothe them as though like, like that's like, I'm like, she's not being taught this behavior, quote unquote, right? But she's obviously seeing how mom probably does that. And again, it's like super interesting if that's just like a self-contained experiment. And I know that there's also influences of school and things of that nature that are a little different, but it's it's interesting to watch that. And I think I don't know, I think that for people to not be able to fully express themselves, right, in whatever way that they deem most fit with whatever energy they want to put forth, is is an interesting thing that we're going through right now. um
Yeah,
so
I
yeah.
no, I agree. And like in my role in education, you definitely see a blurring of those lines, the gender norms. Um, like I started teaching back in 2011, and boys were definitely fundamentally into traditionally boy things, and girls were fundamentally traditionally into girl things. And what I noticed in particularly in the last few years is that that doesn't really seem to apply anymore. Not that boys are into girl things or girls are into boy things. It's like there almost isn't boy things and girl things for them to be into anymore. And that, and not having a sense of that tribe could lead to a little bit of uncertainty, particularly for men who thrive in communities and groups and having people around them who sort of that are aligned to the person they want to be.
Yeah. Seamus, you're quiet over there. What are you absorbing over there?
I feel like I'm in, like, the first thing that comes up into my head, Stephen, is like just me as a young boy. I had 4 brothers in the household, and we were like rough and tumble and pushing each other around. And I feel like this is so serendipitous. I love this word. Marcus has known I keep saying this ever since our first podcast and all that. But like, this is the work that I feel like I'm doing in my therapy work. So maybe you can dissect this a little bit. But like, I feel that my identity is not necessarily serving me, because I felt that a certain man trait is this very stern, stoic, strong, always dependable version. But because I've always felt that way and wanted to be seen that way and wanted to see myself that way, it's running into conflict with how I actually deal with conflict resolution in my relationships, in my life. And I feel like that's that form of masculinity that's like, I don't want to say toxic, but it's just like not serving me, because it's not actually skilled. It's not skilled based. It's more reactive. Is that what you feel is like a certain level of masculinity, or like certain level of men, they lack certain skills because they just haven't really worked on their identity, or they worked on their identity from a young age? Like for me, I was in sports, combat athlete. I was a captain, wrestled all the way to college. I really wanted to have this identity of like strong natured and all that. But now in this age of 30 years old and older, like I feel like I'm ready for this evolution, but there's these certain traits of myself defeating me. Does that make sense, Stephen? It's a little bit like far-fetched of a idea.
Oh yeah, I definitely think, and I'm going to say that many of your listeners might disagree with me, but I actually think there's a fundamental self-esteem challenge amongst men today. I think a lot of men might feign high self-esteem, they might feign ego, but really it's just a masking agent for what their real self-esteem is. And I think what you're describing to me there is what a lot of my clients might describe, is that they are lacking self-esteem in what they're doing. They can't see any value in what they do, and they think that their value only comes from results, from achieving things, from being the best, from all of these things. And as a society, we really do just reward results, being the best, being CEO of my company, all these things. And men are achieving these things and they're still not happy. And that's because they don't have that self-esteem. And I think when it comes to self-esteem, it's so strongly correlated with life satisfaction, obviously, but it's also correlated with relationship quality. And if you have higher self-esteem, you can engage in positive behaviors. You can value your partner's achievements and what they're saying. You can maintain relationships better because you feel more comfortable with yourself. I'm talking to someone who has been in a relationship where my self-esteem wasn't high, and it just put my relationship on edge all the time because I wasn't feeling the best about myself. And you have a lot of men that come to me and they're like, I just don't think I'm actually good enough for my girl. I don't think I'm going to be able to provide for her. I don't think I'm going to do all these things. And so their self-esteem takes a knock. And that can obviously then has the knock-on effects of anxiety and things like that. So if we can teach men to improve their self-esteem, if we can teach them to have better communication skills, and a lot of these first feel unusual, they're going to feel strange, they're going to feel unpracticed. You guys work in combat sports, that if someone comes into the gym fresh, they're not going to have the skills and be equipped with the right tools to be the best they possibly can, and they're going to feel strange and unusual. But through practice, these things just become the norm of who you are. And that's linked to that growth mindset as well, and understanding that we all have the ability to change. We all have that neuroplasticity to really move forward.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate that. I feel like I gave you like a heavy, I gave you like, hey, here's what my therapy session is, and you're handling that. I love that self-esteem concept. I think, self-esteem related to this self-image, for men, and this is something, that goes deep, but I feel if we can kind of cover some ideas around what like low self-esteem activities are, right? Like what are some low self-esteem activities that keep recopulating what self-esteem is that, does that mean like, hey, they're not engaging in relationships that are meaningful, or are they engaging in just like dopamine level addictive, behaviors, or just chasing things that they do have this science of success? And I say this because I'm working with this man as well who he's like achieved everything. He's like 65 years old, but he's like, I'm telling you this right now, Seamus, I am nowhere near what I feel like I actually need. Like I'm succeeded in everything. I have a real estate business. I've created partners. I'm, multiple homes around the world, but I just don't feel fulfilled. Like, is there that concept where you can achieve all you want, but you can never feel fulfilled in your self-esteem because you're just constantly chasing, I don't know, like these low self-esteem behaviors?
Well, in positive psychology, Sonia Lyubomirsky, who has done a lot of research around positive psychology and positive psychology intervention, she talks about happiness, and she uses a pie chart to demonstrate this. And she says that half of a person's happiness is determined by their genetics, and only 10% is circumstantial. So that means no matter what you achieve, your baseline level of happiness is going to change. You're going to keep looking for more because you're only really touching and tipping the scales onto that positive path. And that means we have a 40% of happiness that can be determined by habitual practices that we can apply to our lives. Going back to your question, so you were asking me what does low self-esteem look like, and how can people get out of it?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, like some examples of what like low self-esteem looks like, especially with males. I mean, I know this work particularly well because like I've been it, I've been it, and I work with a lot of men around it in terms of fitness and nutrition. But like overall, give us some global aspects of like low self-esteem looks like and how to move for males.
So I'll use a client as an example. So I have one client. He's a really successful businessman here in Cork, a bit like the guy that you're working with. He has created a hospitality location that is super successful. It's really popular in the area that it's in. It's really regenerated the area that it's in. And he talked about his reasons for doing that, and that was to bring people together. And it's such a success. And he's talked about his past and things that he's had to overcome, and things in his personal life that are super challenging. And he just says, I cannot feel positive about this location. Everyone is enjoying it apart from me. And so really, with a person like that, you're really focusing on expressing gratitude for what they have. What are the three things in your life that you're positive that you did today, that you're grateful for, and how did you contribute? And more importantly, if they weren't just something that happened to you, how did you play a part in making those things a success? And that's just a small little positive psychology intervention that anyone can apply to their lives today on what they achieved on what day is it today, the 15th of January, or what they can also apply to their lives. So savoring those small wins.
Yeah.
It can also look at someone who on the face of it has it all in terms of their family. They have the beautiful wife, they have some great children, but their relationship isn't fulfilling them. And because of that, they feel like their self-esteem is taking a hit because they have not managed to have the life that they pictured when they first married this person. They've not been able to sustain that. So that might just require a small little communication intervention. And one of those things that I apply is the concept of active constructive communication. I'm not sure if you came across it, but there are 4 styles of communication. There's active constructive, there's active destructive, and passive constructive. So if we look at active destructive communication, this deflates a relationship. So if your partner comes in and you have low self-esteem and they say to you, hey, babe, I've just got a promotion at work. you immediately dismiss their good news and say, well, I had an awful day, I want to talk about this. Passive destructive, you might steal the conversation. So, hey, I got a promotion at work. Oh, well, that sounds great. Well, we've got to think about the kids here. Active constructive communication, what you're actually doing is you're celebrating them. So you're celebrating the achievements of your partner. And for a lot of men, that might feel really unusual. Your partner comes in, hey, I've just got a promotion. You say to them, hey, babe, that's amazing. Come on, sit down. Tell me all about it. Yeah, what kind of things are you going to be doing? Will it change your income? How can I support you? And just placing yourself in that regard, think of yourself as doing those a lot of masculine related sort of habitual behaviors, like providing, being the sorry guys, I'm struggling my words for a minute. Being the provider, you're providing your care and your attention. If you can flip your mindset to think about things like that, if you can flip your mindset to saying, I am going to provide myself and my effort and my concentration and my celebration on this person, just by flipping your mindset in that regard, you can start create positive emotions for yourself.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That actually that helps a lot, and I think that helps. I love the few examples that you have there, and I love the education things because it's funny. My fiance did get like a higher position, all these things, and I had to make sure I did the constructive support type of language and just make sure she felt validated.
Yeah, and Seamus, like I'm sure for a lot of men that could feel really unusual. Really unusual. Your partners come in and they have got a position that is higher earning than you, that is going to get more notoriety, and that's it. That's great. That's a great metric of it. And you, really threatening. As the guy, we're meant to be the sole provider. We're meant to be the person that's successful. We're meant to be the person that gets the results, and our partner has gone out and done the same. And maybe fulfilling that active, constructive mindset and that active, constructive position in a conversation, it could be super challenging. And a lot of guys don't know how to do it. But as it says there, if you can be supportive, if you can just listen, if you can ask the questions that are open-ended, that look for more inquiry from your partner or the person that you're talking to, it can enhance that connection so much. And just think about how nice it might be for your partner to say, hey, I'm really pleased you could do that for me. It's obviously not going to change your position and their position, but it can bring you closer together on that journey. I'm sorry, guys, if I feel I seem to always go back to relationships with these kind of things, but
well, I think that makes sense though, because I think relationships are where this comes out more, though, right? Because if you're alone as a male, you can, I don't know, be in your own space and kind of get through the day and probably move forward. But it's in the relationships, especially the tough relationships, where your will has to meet the rest of the world, and that's a challenge in which your personality has to go against, and then the reality of the situation comes out. So I think relationships are a great place to always start, because that's that's what the Magical Perspective is all about: talking with people, real relationships, making sure that we're coaches, we deal with people.
For sure. And like relationships are so key, and for men they're particularly key. I think a lot of men's well-being issues can be linked back to the health of their relationships, the ending of relationships. It's what my thesis was on in my master's program. So I am quite passionate about the impact relationships have. And I think for a lot of people, if their relationships are healthy, and when I say healthy and when I talk about positive psychology, I'm not talking about happy clappy, we're high-fiving and hugging each other all the time, but they're solid, they have a sense of purpose, that they're moving forward. It can, life, funnily enough, probably start working out around that.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, I kind of envisioned this, but I figured I was like, let me go grab an image of that. And then I feel like you said, it does kind of go back to behavioral things, because your self-esteem is going to have some sort of tide of relationships. I think it's like there's a strong link to those things, and self-esteem is again, I feel like if you're more isolated, it's hard to then seek out, constructive or destructive type of conversations. And then you just probably automatically go into this like default state that obviously is a little more like negative self-talk, right? Versus like obviously the topic today with more like positivity and positive mindset and growth mindset type of things. So the thing that got me though is like, I feel as though going back to like relationships and communication, oftentimes for me, what is coming from a place of like being very like active and constructive, the other person you're talking to thinks of it as like maybe destructive. And like whether it's passive or actively destructive, probably left to their interpretation, especially with all the technology we have today. And I actually think I saw a post today that kind of highlighted this thing. And this person was talking about the simple ear pods and a lot of these missing interactions of the like these micro interactions of the world that actually help boost self-esteem and positivity for people. And we're going to default to the gym, but the gym is a great place where this actually happens. Like people are like not communicating, like actual like verbally communicating with people because everyone's with their headphones working out. And so like there's a lot of these little like micro moments that people are missing out on that actually have a link and a tie to like behaviors that they're noticing. And I was like, oh man, I wonder why the younger generation is fucked, for lack of a better term. Because you take those moments for granted. You're like, yeah, like, I mean, it's like, I mean, for me, like, whenever I notice people kind of wandering at the gym, like if they are looking, if it's a little bit busier right now, so I'm like, do you just want to work in? And the person yesterday, he was like, you're not using the same, like, I'm not using the same attachment, and like felt bad. I was like, oh, you could switch it between sets. Like, I don't want to like hog the equipment. I was like, nah, like I'll just wait, kind of thing. And I was like, it happened. I watched the video right before that interaction happened. Granted, we both had our headphones, and I was like, maybe it matters to some degree. Maybe people will put that in as kind of like a cloak, like they don't want it actual engagement because they're maybe a little more introverted, even though they're at the gym. But I was like, yeah, that those interactions still happen. But then again, like I went so many years without these things being there, so I'm like, oh, let me just pause this. Let me make sure it's not in like, make sure it's in transparency mode versus like active noise cancellation, and I mean, all these little things stack up and add up in terms of like how you're going to interpret the world, and then also build like, oh man, like I fumbled that conversation with that person, and you just dwell on it for the day. Like,
I know.
I look like a fucking idiot because I said, just like, yeah, have a great workout. Yeah, you too. And you're just like, oh shit, this person's not working out today. They're just at the front desk.
Yeah,
It's
dude.
I remember when I was at a low ebb, and I went to a gym. It was like a boot camp, and we were put into like teams. Like it was like a random Saturday workout, and we were put into teams. And I just kind of said to myself, I come to the gym because I don't want to talk to people. that's why I'm here. But I think there is an element, and I totally agree. Our communication skills are totally changing. There is, I drive to work every morning, and I have to cross Cork City, and you see people, and they've got the phone up to their mouths, but they're not talking on the phone. They're just like submitting a voice note, or they're obviously the heads down and they're typing a message. And I suppose a lot of work I'm doing as an educator with kids is just teaching those communication skills, adding information to their stories, adding more than saying yeah and no to how was your day. It was good. Okay, why was it good? Tell us why it was good. Who was there? All of these things that they are learned skills, and children are being taught them. But I think as they go into their teens, and way teens are particularly communicating through different social media apps, it's totally changing. And
Yeah.
and bad communication has such a negative impact on relationships. John Gottman, who if you can check out, if you're interested in relationship work, Gottman and the Gottman Institute they're really the standard bearer in relationship work. He says that he can pretty much tell within 20 minutes of meeting a couple that come to see him whether they're going to get divorced or not. which is pretty incredible.
That's the love languages guy, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I remember listening to that, and I feel like I've read that book, visited that book multiple times, and like just making sure that like I remind myself, oh, my fiance is acts of service, touch, and it isn't it like once a couple gets to like stonewalling or being, I don't know the word for it, but they get to this point of like just like negative energy that like in 20 minutes he's like, yeah, that's they're screwed.
There's no hope for these guys because good communication skills, they're like central to resolving our conflicts. They're essential to maintaining strong relationships. Positive communication predicts higher life satisfaction. So it makes sense that to enhance our relationships, we need to have better communication skills. But for a lot of men, they just don't have it. Either that they've never been taught, or they're out of practice, or they don't have the confidence to apply it. And obviously, a lot with the communication, there has to be an element of self-disclosure. And self-disclosure for men can feel really uncomfortable. As men, we're not traditionally associated with self-disclosing our difficulties and our challenges and our dark passengers. And I know you guys are very open to doing it, but I know men in Western society, having lived in the States, I know a lot of men don't want to talk about their feelings. Here in Ireland, they definitely don't want to talk about their feelings whatsoever. So getting men to feel comfortable doing that in a safe space is a real motivation of mine. I think as well, a lot of men, they have perhaps self-disclosed in a relationship, and it probably creates that internal conflict for them because it almost feels like, well, I'm not meant to be doing this. This is not what I do. I've never done this before. And if that is not always received in the way that they should hope, that can be really challenging. And I think I went on a path where, I came back to Ireland. I was single, and I was very open with people I went on dates with. And then because that's who I am, and I think if you're really just secure in who you are, then you'll find the right person that's going to match that energy from you.
Yeah. No, I agree with this a lot. I'm just gonna, from a different type of relationship instead of man and woman, I'm gonna talk about like my coaching relationships here, Stephen, just to kind of
Please,
showcase.
yeah.
So one thing I've learned in like my decade long's worth of coaching people is this concept of perfectionism and vulnerability, where folks that can't seem to follow the plan start stonewalling, or they start retreating and start being avoidant. And I've really realized, once I've understood someone's personality from like a health questionnaire or just getting to know them, I just call that out right away at the beginning. I'm like, the more you can communicate with me, I don't care if you are eating shit food, you didn't do your workout, you didn't sleep. The more you can just tell me that, I am not judging it. I am just looking at it as data. And it helps me come to you. And I've told them, and I've asked them, I'm like, do you feel like when you tell me this that I'm going to judge you, or do you feel like you're just critical on yourself? And the answer that I've been getting a lot lately is they're like, there may be some of that judgment, but they're like, I'm actually just really critical of myself because I set this high standard. And then if I don't hit that standard, I just beat myself up. And it's this idea of perfectionism. And then like it stops them from being vulnerable or stops them from being communicative. And I think that's one area with men. And I coach a lot of men where I'm like this too, where like I set a goal and then it's like, oh shit, it starts shrinking. But I tell them all the time, I'm like, with coaching, I tell them all the time, I'm like, me getting communicated with you is a moment of support and a reset. And it's just a reset of expectations. Like you said this, but you weren't hitting that. Let's say you wanted to hit 5 workouts per week and you're like, gun home and hit this meal plan perfect. Oh, okay. You realize you can only hit 2 and you realize you can only eat breakfast correctly, like, so I have to like really tell them like, this is where it's at. I'm not beating you up for it. I want you to just come to me and be able to manage that because you have this goal and outcome. We just might have to change where this goal and outcome goes in your timeline. We don't have to change the goal. We could just probably change the timeline. So that's like something that like, you're talking about this topic of like vulnerability and self-disclosure. I think in the coaching aspect or the relationships I see in fitness and nutrition, the more you disclose, the more I can coach you. But the less you disclose, like I realize, oh, maybe there's something going on deeper where you're beating yourself up or something.
For sure. There's nothing more damaging to a coaching relationship than your client being threatened by or fearful of telling you that they've not achieved something. And I think the way you've approached it is actually really lovely, Shane. It's a real holistic approach to it. I think what I always ask my clients at the end of a session, it's very much solutions focused. It's very much coming from the client, what they want to achieve. But I definitely don't come from a place that where I tell my clients, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Do some men need that? Perhaps, but I think I can take that approach where I invite them to do it and then ask them at the end of it, how can I help you this week achieve that goal? What would be useful for you, for me to help you? And again, that puts the onus back on them to set the goals and what they want to achieve. And it also gives me a scope of what they're comfortable with sharing as well. That they might need, hey, I need you to text me every morning and just remind me of my goal. I need you to follow up with me at the end of the week to see if I've achieved it. Give me 2 days grace so I can start catching up. But I think the role of a coach in those environments as well is when the client comes in and you ask them how their week's gone, how did they go in relation to their goal. If they say to you, look, I was a disaster. I didn't achieve anything. We said we'd do X, Y, and Z. I didn't even get to X. And so you're, I think, really effective coaches. And, I've had the opportunity through my studies to see people really effectively coach. And I'd love to get to the point where I'm really feel as comfortable, as natural as those people are. But what they do is they really reflect back onto the client what they've achieved. They make really clear terms, and and then they ask that question at the end. So now I've told you all those things that you said back to me. Now that I've reflected back, do you still think it was a terrible week? Say, maybe I did get to X, and maybe I did go on to Y. And that small little boost at the start of a coaching session can really give the impetus for the rest of the session and how it moves forward.
Yeah, 100%. Marcos, we have a lot of clients and patients like that where they're like, they've lost like 20 pounds and they get on a call with you, right? And they're like, yo, it's a shit show. I haven't lost the weight I wanted. It's like, are you serious? Like you just lost 20 pounds or whatever the goal is,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, going back to just like positive outlook and theories behind it is like, I feel like it's always like an uphill battle for anybody that's driven. And I think when you mentioned that, Stephen, it's like kind of this thing where it's hard to look back and reflect on what got you started with the coach and look back of all the milestones that you've accomplished, right? Because I think innately we're self-sabotaging in our self-talk. I mean, even myself, I'm like, you're not as lean as you were fucking in June. So therefore, like you're a piece of shit, like, you're just like, I was like, you don't need to eat that fucking cookie right now. You're like, I'm like, dude, why am I having this like internal dialogue? Well, like, I guess I am talking to myself. So it is a dialogue. I'm having this back and forth about like my conflicted interest of like, for me, it's always food, right? It's always like, this is the thing that like separates you and makes you, makes you become the person you're supposed to be. It's this thing that you've wrestled with for so long. And it's also what you coach. So you got to like kind of practice what you preach. And then it's funny to watch my own self-sabotaging behaviors and then wake up the next day and then like try to like be like, but did I get away with it? Right. So literally last night, I'm like looking at these brown butter chocolate chip cookies from Whole Foods. My wife bought like an extra box of them, and I had a little bit more than I probably should have, right? And this morning I was like, well, we'll kind of see. Because I'm like, again, I know that like anything I put more effort towards that has some tracking element to it, right? That ultimately, like, I then know like definitively it's not going to bother me, but I'm playing this game of like, well, how much would it affect me? Right. And same thing with the clients, right? There's days where, if there's omission, right? If they don't fill something out or they don't give you any actual tangible number feedback, that it's as if the day didn't exist, right? Seamus, you ever have that with like some of your spreadsheet stuff? And you're like,
all the time. I'm always asking like, what happened here? And,
Yeah,
they're reluctant to say something, but it's like, I'm not judging. I'm just curious,
yeah, but ultimately, when you're focusing in, like, a week is very myopic. It's very minuscule in the grand scheme of changes when it comes to what we do, more so, Stephen. Like, do you do nutrition coaching on top of it, or is it all just behavioral coaching?
No, all behavioral coaching. If you look to me, nutritional coaching is definitely not something that I would be that I could fulfill. I have the same problem as you, Marcos, when it comes to the cookies.
Okay,
Hey,
okay, like, the behavior around food is an interesting one because, like, obviously our point of emphasis is definitely about behaviors related to, like, what caused you to lean into this decision with food. Are you actually hungry? Is there some other type of thing that's like setting you off? Is there, ultimately, what's the underlying issue that's going on at the time where you're making this decision to not track, not give a shit, because it's late at night, because your kids are being assholes, whatever it is, right? And I've easily identified, like, my personal, like, moments with that. But then to do
Mm.
it from a coaching perspective with other people, it's like you said, I don't want to call them out. I want them to kind of, like, again, understand that this is like a judgment free zone. Because ultimately, like, I don't really care. Like, I don't want to cause an issue with being like, God, Marcos is an asshole. Like, he's going to judge me. I hate being judged. And therefore I should just do it perfectly. And then I can just say, or just say that I did it perfectly. And then the data is just not working. And then I have my out, you know what I mean? But ultimately, like, again, when you take this information, I'm very data driven, you zoom out, you look at these days, like I asked Seamus about, where it's just a blank, right? Or all zeros, or like incomplete logs, right? This is telling a very unique story about, like, the perfectionism behind everybody, like that internal drive to be perfect. But ultimately, I think that's where Seamus and I, when we're coaching people and then looking at how the behavior would then impact it, our goal is to take the positives of that week and shine that spotlight on that to help people bring it up and say, hey, you are doing a good job in a few different areas that you're really overlooking. And it may seem like stupid because it's basic, but basics is where the results lie, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what would be something, Stephen, that I could do to show more gratitude towards myself? What is it that, like, what does all the research and evidence say that, like, could help bring more prosperity in that, like, in that realm for me?
So you mean prosperity in the realm in the process as opposed to the results?
Yeah, like, what should I be doing that's a process oriented thing to help me have to receive more gratitude, right? Like, I think, like, a gratitude practice, right? It's better if you're receiving it from other people, if I'm not mistaken, right? Based on things that I've listened to and read.
Yeah,
Like,
but like I said earlier, you can apply gratitude to yourself. You can do that simple gratitude exercise that I discussed earlier on. That's a really, really simple one. But it's just savoring this, being aware that savoring. And I think you talk about pitfalls that we fall into with certain habitual behaviors, and they're always the things that we focus on, those negatives that we focus on. And we have this thing in positive psychology: you can't not think something. So if I said to you, "Don't think about the pink elephant," you're going to think about the pink elephant. So you have to find a way of replacing that negative thought. And the thing that I love with when they have those negative thoughts, I really go back to what was that activating belief, what was the activating event, what was the belief that came from that, and what are the consequences of that belief. And then, so that's that ABC, and then we go to that D where we try to dispute that belief system, and from then
yeah.
we can energize. So ABCDE is a really easy way of remembering it. And
can
so
you, can you say that one more time for the A through E? What it is?
so A for activating, B for belief, C for consequences, D for disputing, and E for energizing. So what you're
Okay.
trying to do is you're trying to dispute that belief system. So we use it from I'm trying to think of an example that might be linked to what you guys are doing, but a client comes in and they haven't lost their weight goal, And so that creates a belief system. Well, Jesus, I'm never going to get to my target weight. Consequences are that fall they fall off the wagon and it's a complete mess.
Mhm.
So the first thing you need to do is be super aware. You just need to be super aware. Okay, this is what activated it. This is my belief system, and this is the consequence. But once you've named that feeling, then you can start to tame it. So you start to dispute that belief system. So yeah, I might not have lost my weight target this week, but look at where I've come from. Look at what I've achieved so far. There's always an opportunity for me to, you know, lose that weight next week. It's not going to change my life. And that disputing leads to that energizing where you can move forward. I think the problem, and I said this earlier on, we're so results driven. And you said it there, Marcus, about that strive for perfection. And I was definitely there. I wanted to be the best. When I was playing Gaelic games, I wanted to be the best all the time. And I didn't care how I won. And in that process, I was on the field, I was knocking guys out, I was doing anything I could to win. That I actually kind of stressed myself out. I didn't enjoy the process as much. And if we can really help individuals just focus in on what's the enjoyment here. There's a really great model from, trying to think of his name, Tal Ben Shahir, and he has the hamburger model. And his concept of happiness is that he uses the hamburger as the demonstration for it. That you could go and get an In-N-Out burger for some of your local terms, and you're going to enjoy it in the moment. It's going to be absolutely delicious, but it's not going to serve you going forward. And a lot of men sort of go on that nihilistic path. But if you can get on a path where you find a burger and you enjoy it, it serves you in the present, but it's also going to serve you in the future, that's where true happiness lies. And just helping people reach that place can really help their journey. If we can just take away, like, results are important, and society is set up for people to succeed. But if we can really try to get people to enjoy the everyday aspects of their lives by just being present, by just savoring, by just looking and aligning themselves with the things and the values that are truly important to them, as opposed to what society expects of them, what their friends and family, their relationships expect of them, then I think we're on a better path of getting people out of that negative mindset and into that positive mindset.
Yeah, I love that. I love that burger analogy. I think human beings create a lot of mental constructs that are always conflicting or contradictory, because it's like it's there's so many ways to skin that cat, but it's you know leading into the positive psychology. What I really love, Stephen, is like you said something there, opportunities for progress, right? Like one thing I've changed in my coaching is like, what were your wins this week? What did you struggle with, and what are our next steps? Like that's usually how a check-in call goes. I've changed that. I've gone like, hey, what's been some progress markers, and where are some areas where we find some opportunity to make some adjustments? And I feel like that language really changes the dynamic of a call, right? And it creates momentum. And I think one thing Marcus and I talk a lot about with a lot of our clients that are, let's just say, like weight focused, like I need to look at the scale. I need to look at the scale. Is finding like 100 different ways to win, finding the many ways to win within a day, and that comes back to presentness, right? You may not be lower on the weight, but another way we look at it is photos. That's objective. Okay, but how about subjective? How are you feeling today, right?
Mm,
How was your focus today? How was, I don't know, simple little just markers of energy that give you more wins. And I think when you have those wins, right, Stephen, I think that builds momentum. And momentum, it can be small, but it starts gradually growing. And I think people can start learning how to be a little bit more holistic and intuitive rather than always just working on objective measurements. We're always going to have the objective measurements because that's what we get paid for, right, Marcos? Like, that's what we get paid for. But how a person feels and actually applies that behavior, and the mindset behind it, the intentionality behind it, I think is going to be what keeps us sustainable,
for sure. And one thing in my positive psychology training that I've come across is that can you make that 2% improvement, 2% improvement, 2% improvement. And I think it's really important that you don't neglect or give people an out. You don't give people an out of saying, hey, listen, yeah, well, look, I put on 5 pounds today. I went out drinking all weekend. I did all these things, and you say, look, it doesn't matter. It's like, okay, yeah, look, I went out the weekend, but look, I was able to do this instead. I still managed to apply my improvements to other areas of my life, but I wanted to go and enjoy myself and having those conversations. So I think it's really important that we can still look at progress, but also, as you said, look at progress in different areas and not just see it as this, golden mecca, golden oasis on the top of the mountain that we have to reach. That's going to be the only achievement that we can celebrate. I remember someone saying that if you only have one goal, you can only celebrate once. But if you set lots of different goals along the way, you've got all of these different opportunities to celebrate. And I thought that was just a really cool way of reframing goal setting and reframing long-term goals and reframing small achievements and looking for, as you said, looking for small achievements throughout someone's week, day, year, whatever.
Did you say that a photo is more of an objective measure, Seamus? I feel like it's more subjective.
I mean, we could argue semantics here, subjectively of the person, but objective for me to look at. But it's subjective to the person. I mean, I don't know. I think at some point, how objective, what level of objectivity are we getting to? Are we getting to like objectivism? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just say like photos and stuff like that.
I'm interested, guys, from your point of view, and there's definitely a lot of debate within positive psychology coaching about challenge, and I think we definitely have an approach in positive psychology. Whatever the client wants to achieve, it's there for them to achieve it. I'm in a health and fitness and health and nutrition point of view that I think it's a lot more black and white. And I've always wondered, how do you approach challenge and challenging your clients? And we've been sort of encouraged to apply gentle challenge. But for you guys, what is it that you do when you do set those goals and you do set those challenges?
Margaret, you want to go first on this one? I have some thoughts, but you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, challenges are, I could just use like an actual challenge, like a fitness 6-week challenge as like an entry point for people getting into their journey. The reason why a lot of people dislike it, and actually one of my previous bosses, if not both of the ones that I used to work with, would say that they despise them, right? They're like, these don't work. They lose sight of what it can actually unlock for people. The obstacle, right? The obstacle of just getting started. So I had it in my head for better half of like a decade that I shouldn't be doing challenges. Only to come to find out that like a challenge is whatever I make it if I'm the one, creating the guidelines at which you're going about the challenge, right? So, hey, I'm setting you up so you can build your momentum. I know that most people need that. We're doing this literally this weekend with a group of people. I literally have like 30 people signed up to get started in some sort of nutrition journey. And I intentionally didn't have it start the first week of January because I know that I'm doing a disservice because people are highly motivated. It probably would sell maybe a little bit better. But I know that like ultimately the challenge is to get these people momentum and finish this completion date by the end of February, such that it would hopefully lead them into a happier and more positive, summer months here in the States, right? So again, these obstacles and these challenges and these goals that we're setting forth is like, again, that's one of the questions inside of that like initial intake is like, hey, what do you hope to accomplish in this 6 weeks? And realistically, because people know it's not a long enough time to really see like a life-changing thing because they've done those, they've been sold on the 30-day challenges before. that they come up with a very realistic expectation of what they hope to accomplish, right? And I think that
Mm.
like because people think that all these, and again, like I don't brand it that way either. I'm like, hey, this is a 6-week kickstart. This is the jumpstart your nutrition. Yes, there's going to be winners, but everybody can win because each challenge of each week is not about who's weighing less. It's about who's actually engaging and being active and fostering more positive psychology and behaviors around
Yeah.
food, community, and all those things, right? Because ultimately, I view it after all these years that the community and the people you surround yourself with are the people that keep holding you up when you don't want to be there, right? And that again, like that's what I'm after. I would say here, like if I'm working with people one to one, I will likely challenge people to write those goals down, just so I'm like, hey, if you don't write them down, they don't exist, right? I'll challenge you to do that. I don't like you. We can talk about it, but I need to see it. I want you to see it. I want us to
Yeah.
refer back to that. Do we accomplish those things? And I'm maybe a little more headstrong on that these days because I'm like, I can objectively have people float through like a limbo phase for forever, it seems like now. But I want to get them to their overall outcome. I want them to feel more positive about their behaviors. So again, I need them now to write it down so that we can take action. And that's one of my more recent ones. I did it with somebody. She ended up leaving. She realized that like, hey, I've been working with you for 6 months and I'm not to where I was going to be at this point, right? And it was the exercise of her writing it down, saying like, man, I didn't get to my goal in 6 months. I've now spent $1,800 working with Marcos, and I'm not there yet. And again, she's like, well, I'll do one more month with you if you really think that you're going, you believe that us doing this reset will get you, help me with my goals. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is where I told her, I'm like, I have no guarantee. I have no guarantees. Nothing in life is guaranteed, but I have no doubt in my mind that if you actually go to a specialist and actually resolve the issue that I keep on wanting to work with you through, that we will get better. You'll get better progress, right? And I'd rather you take the money that you would pay me to then go and spend it with the specialist that will help you definitively answer if you're dealing with some sort of gut dysbiosis that I cannot identify because of the limitations of me being in the US and you being in the UK.
Mm.
And so again, these challenges and all those things, right? The goals that I outline, again, sometimes it can come to a detriment, but ultimately it puts the person in a better place.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, again, it's interesting, right? Because again, certain things that I thought would never be something I would go to are now things that I like to go to because I have I have this vision of what a challenge means to me to get people in the door and then deliver something at a whole new level. But I know that
Yeah.
not everybody operates that way. But then those individual personal challenges, you got to talk to those people. It goes back to those communication things, right? Am I actively listening to these people and finding ways to communicate with them in a spot where they feel very safe and secure? So I think, granted, I'm talking about something that's like top of mind right now, but I really do view it this way, and a lot of things that help create more positive outcomes for people. And then Seamus will outline what I also do in this next one, I'm sure, because I have a feeling
Yeah. No, I
where he's
mean,
going.
I love it. Well, Stephen, for my background for the last 10 years was managing gyms that ran challenges all the time, 6 week, fit in 42s, 21-day jumpstart. And we ran them in cycles where it was like every quarter, there was a 6 week, and every time there was a 6 week that was, or a 6 week was done, there would be followed up by a 21-day challenge because it was just constantly recursive. That's just the business model of like gyms and stuff like that. And we scaled that and got a lot of clients in the door. But the problem with the challenges that I've seen in the fitness business is I can literally get someone to their goal in 6 weeks. That was like realistic in that 6 week time frame. But I feel like I was depriving them of sustainability. Like I can sprint someone down. Like I could kill someone in a workout. Trust me, like that's possible. But I never really found that to be sustainable, like I'm alluding to. And the problem with that was I've been at gyms for a long time where I spent like a few years at a gym where a person kept on coming in for challenges, but every single time they came back, they just looked worse. They looked like they
Oh.
rebounded and gained more weight. And I was like, we are not servicing this person correctly. So my connotation of challenge, I get it. That I think like in the short run, you have to really set some great standards like Marcos is doing, where it then becomes sustainable, right? Or they really become part of your community, part of your model, and they run that. But if someone is expecting that in 6 weeks is going to answer all their problems, especially let's say around weight loss and obesity, and they've been overweight for 30 years and like that's going to figure it out in 6 weeks, I mean, good luck with that for sure. But with men primarily, I will be honest with you, being me on myself and being a captain and pushing clients and all that, I think you can rev it up, but I don't think you always need to lean on that revving up, like that boot camp voice, you know? But some people do. Some people do. How do I say this? They step up to a challenge when you put it in front of them. I like a gentle challenge, and I do call people out a lot, and but it comes from a place of love, and I think there has to be a lot of trust garnished there. Like I've been working with like certain clients for like years, and they put a lot of trust in me, and in the network of coaches that I'm in, that I get referrals from with like the men's group that we work with, they put a lot of trust in me right away that I call their bullshit out real quick. Like, so for example, I just had someone come back a second time, and I worked with them for 6 months. They got to their goal, but they were kind of like this one person where they just had a lot going on, and they're one of the folks that I don't think anyone's not coachable, Stephen, but there's sometimes a level where, and Marcos can say this, but like there's sometimes a level where it's like maybe they're just not coachable for me, or they're just not coachable at the moment, whatever it is, but they're coming back, and the first 10 minutes of the call, I haven't talked to this person in like a year, but we've gotten intimate before. I just went for the jugular. I was like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here a second time? Like, what's going on? Like, what's going to make this change? Like, why? And I pose that. It's a challenging question, but they were able to overcome it and go through it, and they got real with me, and I do that. I think it has to be poignant. It has to be strategic. You can't just be yelling all the time. You know, you have to be smart with that kind of coaching. I think you do a great job of that as well. It's like giving the gentle challenge, and then when a person's ready for it, right, Marcos? Like, all right, let's put a big ball. Like, I want you to do a sprint this week. Like, I want you to lock in this week. Like, you've been doing really well. So little things like that. You just got to be strategic with it. It's a constant day in, day out kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that there's probably definitely an element that comes with experience and just having intuitive nature, listening to your clients, listening to yourself, and probably going with your gut feeling on certain things as well. And I love what both of you said. I think it demonstrated a lot of honesty, a lot of integrity, but also a lot of really client focused work, which it should be really at the center of what we do. I definitely, when you look at the coaching landscape out there, and a lot of it's related to high performance, a lot of it's related to, like upgrade your life in 28 days. And I think for me,
Yeah.
that I've been sort of encouraged in my work to do that. And I think in talk therapies, that's really hard. You can't, it's very hard to, 28
Dude,
days
can I
is,
be honest with you, Steven? Like
yeah,
I've been tracking the sessions. I'm like 23 sessions deep with my therapist, and I feel like we're just finally getting to like there. And I was like, I felt like we were doing a lot in the first 10, and then the 10 to the 20th. But now we're getting, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot here. Like, you can't do this in 28 days. You can't do this in one session. You know?
no, because as you said, as human beings, we're totally multifaceted. We're really complex. There's certain things
Mm-hmm.
that have triggered us in the past that that we don't even know are triggering us. We don't even know the impact they've had on us, and even to the depth that, like, really, we spend a lot of time in my training on rapport building, but like rapport can just take for so long. Now you can instantly know if you don't have rapport with someone, and you're not going to have a connection, and it's going to be really difficult to work with them. But if you can sense a little bit of rapport there, it still takes time to build that relationship. It still takes time to develop that security, that that person knows that they can trust you, and what they share is going to be listened to, and that you're going to help them act upon it. And so from a business point of view, it's I feel like it can be difficult, but what the integrity that both of you shown, and the ethical sort of stance that you have to your approach to coaching, is kind of really what I'm always keen to apply. Like you said, Marcus, not bring, you look at the New Year's and people, especially gyms around the world, jumping on the back of New Year's resolutions, and I think it's starting to move into the talk therapy coaching sphere now as well, where people are encouraged to change. Yeah, obviously, a new year brings about change and brings about people wanting to develop better habits and better rituals around themselves and different areas of their lives. But
Mm-hmm.
the reality is, what's to stop you doing that in February? What's to stop you doing that at any point in the year? Every day has an opportunity for you to take a step to improve your life.
Yeah.
And I think centering it around in an accelerated platform, particularly from a talk therapy point of view, is really challenging. And I suppose that's why I haven't started doing it yet, because I can't think of a way to really effectively apply it.
It's hard. It's hard. I feel like, and I do want to say this, like we're over an hour, so I want to make sure I'm respectful of the time here, Stephen. But I feel like there are like leading indicators and then lagging indicators when it comes to people, and like some people are leading the way, and then there's just lagging in other areas. You know, when it comes to rapport building or security building and relationship building, and it's like you might be doing really well in one aspect, like you said, but then this aspect's really lagging. But you need this aspect to really get you to where you are, where whether that's what we've talked about, that self-esteem, the vulnerability, the discourse, or communicating better. Like maybe you are getting better at, I don't know, gratitude and journaling, but you're still stuck at like your relationships. Like you're still like thankful, but you don't know how to still talk to your wife or something like that. And like you know, like I can do all the positive thinking in the world, but that doesn't fix my relationship with my wife. I got to practice fixing my relationship with my wife, and that's like a lagging indicator. And I think like I feel that the first moment that you run into an obstacle or a challenge, I think that's the moment where you do have to rely on your coach or rely on your support network to like let them know, because I feel like that compresses the time at which you can figure it out. If you're just trying to figure it out like yourself, it's kind of stupid, because it's like you could go at it for years and never figure it out, and now your relationship's
Mm,
dissolved. Or you could get help from a coach like you or Marcos and I, where it's like you can compress that. You're like, you tell us everything, you give us the data, and it's like, oh, you did a good job here, but we can manage this. And then it's like, oh, okay, now you see the play by play and get an objective repeat, replay. And it's like, that's why I think it's important to, have that support, right?
100%, 100%.
Yeah, it's yeah, the integrity piece, and like you mentioned, like it's big of what we try to emphasize now, knowing after all these years that like to truly get to behavior modification and change and to view things positively, and also learn like minimum effective dose of things versus what a lot of previous like challenges what we generally do with people is like it's a it's a smart goal. It's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, right? I'm going to do this. That's why they sign up for the challenges. I'm going to do this in 6 weeks, and people can view that. And we're also really good at putting stuff off, right? Oh, I can wait until the 18th to start my nutrition stuff. All right, cool, right? But at the end of the day, like the goal of anything that Seamus and I try to do is to foster in, you know, positive motivating behaviors to people and show them how these little things can really add up for you, and that like with each subsequent year you can get a little bit better, like you said, that 2% better kind of approach with a lot of things, right? You're 2% better now with like steps because that was the first challenge they did and they started walking a bit more. 2% better in this area, or learning grace, and then also learning across a 6-week challenge. I mean, I actually know that I'm usually destined to fail in a sense with people because 21 days is usually the attention span for people when it comes to these things. But, my goal is to be like, I'm going to lift you up in these last 3 weeks. You didn't sign up for this to just start it and then kind of fizzle out and then for me to take your money. No, you came here because you're really trying to, push yourself for an extended period of time. And that's where like I hemmed and hawed about this new challenge in this new year was like, do I still do it as 6 weeks? Cause I know 21 days, like, beyond that, people start to fizzle out. And I was like, no, I want to do that because I need that longer period of time to try to hopefully enforce behavior change with people because, again, the holiday season is always the holiday season, even for me and Seamus. Like, we had an episode where I said, like, dude, all I needed to do was to go for a walk for like 30 minutes after on Thanksgiving. I walked for all of like 4,000 steps where normally I average 12K a day. I was like, why the fuck was I so lazy that day? Like I still struggle with that behavior on a holiday, right? It doesn't mean that I give up with it. But I also know too, like, hey, the other days I'll make up for it, right? So, that was my minimum. Like, again, I have a minimum effective dose of walking I normally like to aim for. I had one day where I missed it. How am I, again, I can't have 2 days in a row where I do that, right? So everything that we try to encompass long term is like, hey, you quote, you failed. Yeah, life is full of failures. But what positives can you bring into the next day? Like you're like, I'm motivated today because I can't have 2 days in a row, right?
yeah.
Whatever that thing is. And I think that's ultimately, again, if we're talking about positive mindset and positive behaviors, like again, you have to, I think you're really only as good as like how you handle failure, quote unquote failure,
Oh, failures are great. I've told kids for the last 10 years, mistakes make your brain grow, and
Yes.
it's one of my favorite sayings. I'm obsessed with Carol Dweck and growth mindset, and I think just developing growth mindset amongst ourselves is just vital. And like Marcus,
Mhm.
what you've talked about there is that idea of, okay, you've identified a potential obstacle. I didn't get my 12 steps in because it's a holiday, but you've had a plan to get you through that. And a lot of
Mhm.
people who set their goals and they have the options to achieve those goals, they don't have the plan when there's an obstacle that gets in their way. And I think putting that in place can be really useful to people. Okay, all right, this happened, but this is my way out of it. Okay,
I
I
love
had
that.
this setback, but you know what? That told me about myself that, I'm annoyed with myself about it, but that shows how important it is to me and how I want to move forward from it.
Yeah.
So I think, just as you said, instilling these habits, I think it's what we've all talked about, and I know we work in slightly different spheres, is but just instilling in people that every day you can make a little improvement, but if you don't make that improvement, there's always the option the day after. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
letting people know, like, they have the permission to be human. That's a big thing that I tell people,
Yeah.
just permission to be human, for
Stephen,
sure.
that there's a quote that I'm like thinking in my head right now. It's like, don't let tomorrow's or like don't let today's like fear or struggle or like mistakes steal from tomorrow's like positive momentum, right? Like I think, we may have some mistakes today, but like don't let today's mistakes take away from tomorrow's momentum. I think that's a great point. I think it's poignant, and I think I just want to be respectful of the time, but I think it's a
Yeah,
great place to pause. But we'll
Mhm.
definitely have to continue this. I think your work in the psychology, your work with children. I mean, it's more paramount now that we have to understand psychology, behavior change, masculinity is kind of like the work you're going into a little bit more, and really making sure that if there are problems, we as a community we can get that, but also understand that we have support, and you're one of those folks. So I really am happy that you are one of the people in this space, and you're helping out in your community and how you can do it. But Stephen, any last words? Where can people find you? Yeah, man.
yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at the underscore flourishing man. I try to share positive psychology tips with a male focus there. My website is theflourishingman.com. And I've just started doing, this is very new, it's called the Positive Man Collective. It takes place every Thursday, Greenwich Mean Time, at 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And it's a free online weekly group where men can come together. I'm going to give a positive psychology insight, try and change it up every week. But really, the idea of the group is just to create a community where men feel safe to celebrate their successes, maybe talk about some challenges that they have together. It's not to replace coaching, but I think an important part of what I'm trying to do is promote positive masculinity. And if I'm not doing that in a form that's free and accessible for everyone, I wouldn't be true to who I am and what I want to value. So if you're interested in that, just go to my website, and there's a link to the Positive Man Collective where you can sign up. And it's open to everyone. You don't have to come every week, but I'd love to see you there. I just want to say, lads, what you're doing is great. I also do a podcast called the I Love You Man podcast, and it's very much similar to what you're doing. Seamus, when you were talking about that quote, it gave me, like, I was like, do I have a deja vu moment here? And it's because the guest in my last episode, Kevin Egan, said the exact same quote, which is amazingly coincidental. But I have a lot of discussions like you guys do over a wide variety of topics, from fitness and health to a background in. I taught someone with a background in crime. I had a guest this year who has gone through an IVF journey, a woman, and I've talked to a yoga practitioner. So, like you guys, I'm just trying to get a wide scope of voices on male well-being perspectives. So, yeah, if you want to check it out, I Love You Man, a positive psychology podcast, wherever you get your podcast. And that's enough of my self-promotion. So, thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, man. We appreciate your time. And guys, again, we'll have everything linked in the show notes. So if you found value here, you're looking for some additional, things to listen to, I think Stephen here is doing great things. And, thanks for working with the little ones. You're a bold man to be dealing with the kindergartners. It's like, I cannot fathom you dealing with my daughter in a classroom of however many kids are there. So we need more people like you that help take care of our youth and help them flourish more positive mindsets. So, glad to glad to see that you're spinning that over and, doing that in that area as well. And yeah, everybody, hopefully there was a lot of value here, and we look forward to you guys coming back and checking us out over our next episode next week. Same time, same place, wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, Macro Perspective, we're out.